LeBron James, the oldest player in the NBA, will be turning 40 years old this season, but despite his age, the mileage he has under his belt with the amount of games, minutes, and possessions he's played over the course of his entire career is still playing at a very high level, still a superstar in this league, and still a player who is seeking a championship before setting off into retirement. At this stage in his career, for LeBron, it is all about defining his legacy and achieving that status of being the greatest player of all time. Wherever you have LeBron on your all-time great list, and whether you consider him to be the GOAT or not, I personally still have Jordan ahead of him, but winning one more championship to give him 5 total would make the argument even stronger for why he should be considered the greatest player to ever do it. There's just one problem though. His team isn't anywhere close to truly competing for a title, and they quite literally haven't done anything to make meaningful improvements to the roster. A roster that finished 8th in the Western Conference last season, a play-in team, and an early first-round exit via a gentleman's sweep to the Denver Nuggets. So what does this mean for the Lakers going forward and actually trying to put together a championship contending team? Well, let's talk about it. As always, if you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, it would mean a great deal to me if you subscribe to help the channel grow, and in return I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, this was supposed to be an off-season of change for the Lakers after being a play-in team, failing to make it out of the first round of the playoffs, a team that had championship aspirations. This off-season was a time to fix the holes in their roster and get back to being a top team in the Western Conference again. And of course, like every offseason, Laker fans and the media had their delusions of all their players. They believed that they were going to acquire every big name that was available in the trade market or in free agency was going to be theirs, but thus far, just weeks leading up to training camp, and the Lakers' only changes so far this offseason have been firing Darvin Ham and hiring a first-time head coach with 0 head coaching experience, drafting Dalton Knecht, the oldest player from the 2024 draft, and drafting Bronny James, who I've said before, and I think most would agree, is not an NBA-level player, and the only reason he was even considered to be a draft prospect was because of his dad. They of course let guys like Taurean Prince and Spencer Dinwiddie go and re-signed LeBron James to a 2-year, $101 million contract, which I'll discuss in a bit, and how that in and of itself has set the Lakers back. But that's the extent of the changes or moves that were made by the Lakers this offseason. They are the only team around the league that hasn't signed a single free agent, nor have they made a single trade so far this summer. How is it a team that has 2 aging superstars, one of the biggest markets in the league, and a storied franchise do so little in an offseason that is so critical for their future? Well, there are a few reasons, and one of them is actually on LeBron James himself, which I've talked about in a prior video, so I won't reiterate it too much here. But LeBron, who was believed to be wanting to take a pay cut, a team-friendly discount so the Lakers could use their whole mid-level exception to sign a veteran free agent like a DeMar DeRozan, LeBron at age 39 went ahead and pushed for a 2-year, $101 million deal, pushing the Lakers right up to the very edge of the second apron line, just a few $100,000 below it, and severely limiting them financially to make any concrete moves for the rest of the summer. You would think at this stage in his career, set for life as a billionaire athlete, he got the team to draft his son, you would think his sole focus right now is on winning and doing whatever it costs to get there, even if it includes taking a steep pay cut. Now, I know some have said, well, LeBron was waiting for the Lakers to do something, and because they stalled and sat on their hands and didn't do anything, LeBron said, F it. I'm going to take my max money if you guys aren't going to build a competitive team around me. Nah, I don't really buy that argument. If you want to win no matter what, hell, you could have even opted out of the final year of your deal, which he did, and taken the vet minimum to allow for more financial flexibility and moves to be made on the margins. This was about the money. He still wanted to get his big paycheck, which no one is saying is wrong, but don't try and play it off like winning is your sole focus when you literally signed a deal that limits your team's ability to contend for a title. So that was one aspect for why the Lakers have seemingly been sitting by idle while their competitors have been getting better. The other issue here that I believe isn't being talked about as much is that the Lakers, the front office and ownership, are fully of the belief that the main problem last season was Darvin Ham. And they're looking at a team that went to the conference finals the season before, and that had it not been for some poor coaching, they would have been right back in the mix at the top of the Western Conference. Don't get me wrong, Darvin Ham is not the best coach. He had a lot of questionable rotations, questionable decisions, and it was clear he did not have a good hold of the locker room and inspiring the guys and gaining his respect. But he was not the sole problem of that team, and there were/are fundamental flaws with this roster and how they've been constructed. That's on the front office and not the coaching staff. But because the front office and ownership have always refused to take accountability for their mistakes, they have deluded themselves into thinking the only change that needs to be made is with the coaching staff. And bringing in a small basketball mind like JJ Redick is going to solve all of those problems and get them back to where they were and being one of the top teams in the West, which is just so delusional to think when you're hiring someone who has zero coaching experience at any level, not even as an assistant coach, to hand him one of the toughest, highest pressure coaching jobs in the league, and you think that's going to just fix everything. So I know some are saying, well, there haven't really been many opportunities presented to the Lakers to make meaningful upgrades to their roster, so they're kind of just stuck and biding their time. No, the Lakers could have made some changes to the team to actually fix some of their weaknesses, like their limited three-point shooting, horrible offensive rebounding, and high turnover rate. But the front office is under this assumption that running this group back with a couple of added rookies who aren't going to impact winning right away, and a new head coach is going to make the difference in how they showed up last season. That, and the fact that they're also limited in what they can do, hovering right around the second apron, and even being a first apron team. They wouldn't be able to use the full non-taxpayer level exception, and they're also limited when it comes to making trades and not being able to aggregate multiple players in a deal in exchange for one player, in addition to also not being able to take on more salary than they're sending out in any trade. And for the Lakers, what's worse is that it doesn't get any better going into the following season. It's not like they just have this one season with a very expensive payroll, but a bunch of players on expiring deals to give them a ton of cap space going into next season. No, the Lakers already have $186 million committed for the 25-26 season, which would project them to be over that first apron again, or at least into the luxury tax at the minimum. So you're talking about a situation in which they're going to be limited in what they can do in terms of signing free agents as well as making trades because, again, of the limitations on trades for apron teams for not only this season, but the following season as well. That said, though, that still shouldn't prevent the Lakers from making moves, making trades, even to get off of some of their bad contracts like that of Rui Hachimura. Maybe try to dump Gabe Vincent after overpaying him for a strong playoff performance in Miami. You'd have to think there would be some interest from teams in a player like Jared Vanderbilt, who is still young, great defensive big, and on a reasonable contract. Austin Reeves, who for some reason the Lakers feel is the next coming of Kobe Bryant, with how committed they are to him and refusing to include him in any trade deals. Like, the Lakers can make moves if they really wanted to, and not just making moves purely for the sake of doing something, but actual moves that could improve the roster. One that is more cohesive and well-rounded in terms of improving their overall offensive output, where they're able to get more possessions and shots per game. Last season, they were 22nd in the league in overall field goal attempts and 28th in three-point volume. Conversely, they were dead last in the league in shots given up to their opponent and were horrible at defending the perimeter. If your opponent is able to get 6 more shot attempts in a given game, which was the case for the Lakers last season, it is very hard to win basketball games on a consistent basis. You have to be incredibly efficient if you're not getting as many possessions and shots as your opponent in a game. And one of the main reasons the Lakers weren't able to get as many shots up and gave up the most shots in the league last season is because they were one of the worst teams in the NBA on the offensive glass and dead last in second chance points. And so if I'm the Lakers, I'm really looking at 2 players to help in these areas. One is Zach LaVine, who can help out with their overall offensive output and efficiency, especially their three-point shooting. And the other is Jakob Poeltl. Now, I know you're probably saying, why would the Lakers ever pursue either of these guys when they're both on high contracts and their trade value is at its lowest right now? Well, that's actually why you go after them, when you can likely acquire them via a trade for pennies on the dollar. And yes, I know this is rich coming from a Bulls fan who knows the Bulls can't get off LaVine's contract, but if I'm the Lakers, I'm looking at a player like Zach LaVine, who we now know is healthy, is a very efficient offensive player. He didn't play well last season, but he was hurt and not in the best place with the team struggling. But looking at a player who is a 2-time All-Star, who isn't far removed from a season where he put up over 25 points per game on near 50, 40, 90 shooting splits, a player whose trade value is so low that you could get him for close to nothing and might even get a future asset for it in return. To me, if I'm the Lakers, I'm jumping all over that, because now you add a legitimate third scoring option because D'Angelo Russell and Reeves aren't cutting it. Anthony Davis can now put more focus on defense where he's so much more effective. And yes, you're taking on another max deal, but you can also exchange out some of your bad contracts to bring him in. And then for Jakob Poeltl, yeah, he's declined somewhat from just a couple of years ago, but he's still one of the better offensive rebounders in the game. He's a pretty smart passing big man who can act as a hub on offense, and he's also a great rim protector. All things the Lakers need and were missing last season. Poeltl doesn't fit the Raptors timeline anymore, so they're going to be looking to trade him and trying to get off of his contract. So yet another player they could buy low and not have to give up much for in a trade. Yeah, neither of these moves sets the Lakers up for success in the future, although both of these guys are still in their 20s. It's not like they're that old. But for the Lakers, they've already shown they're not focused on the future. They're focused on winning now while they have these last few good years left of LeBron and the prime of Anthony Davis. So yes, 2 bad contracts that will make it challenging for them in the distant future, but will help them in the immediate term. So do I think the Lakers are ultimately going to do anything for the rest of this offseason? No, because I firmly believe that the front office is of the mindset that they like the group of guys they have, and all that was needed was a coaching change to get them back to where they were just 2 seasons ago. I would love to hear what you guys think though. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.